Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. We're here with a friend, Crypto Lark. How you going, mate?
Good, mate. Good. Great to be chatting to you again.
From across the ditch in New Zealand.
That's right. That's right. For anyone who doesn't know what the ditch is, it's that little stretch of water, like 1,000 kilometers of water separating New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah, and Tasmania is a country, its own country as well, guys. So yeah. How are you holding up in the bear market, mate? We're going to talk about all sorts of things today, but first off, how are you going?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm having a good time, basically. The last week's been extra fun, without a doubt. Now, it's look, I think it's one of those times that really tests your sort of commitment to the whole idea of Bitcoin and blockchain technology and all this. And I'm I'm definitely feeling the hurt like everyone else. I mean, anyone who's been holding different crypto assets for a while, you've seen those depreciate in value, not only against the dollar, but a lot of them have taken massive hits versus Bitcoin, which for me is the real concern. Like, no, that means I have less Bitcoin now in the long term. So
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? Because you say, oh, it's happened before. We've seen these corrections, these ups and downs. But if you did buy at the top, it's very, very painful. But it's almost a rite of passage. And if you were an early investor, we didn't know if these stuff was going to work or not. So if we
mhm.
do succeed and we're right, I think the upside is going to be tremendous from the current levels.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My biggest FOMO at the moment is like, oh my God, look how cheap everything is. Why I wish I had more fiat on hand to actually start buying into some of the positions that I'm looking around at. Like, wow, that is like at an amazingly cheap price at the moment, whether it be in Bitcoin value or in, dollar value for so many of these different assets. I mean, Ethereum's just crazy at the moment, and a lot of other things as well, things I never thought I'd see prices on. I'm seeing prices on, and it makes me go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
now is a great time. And you hit that maximum fear time in the market, and that is ironically the best time to buy, but it's the hardest time psychologically to buy.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a couple of good points there. So people say, well, how can you say coins are cheap? We have no way to value these. But I honestly think that you can really just trade or invest alone on sentiment sometimes when it honestly gets, when everyone's saying that something like Ethereum is dead or altcoins are going to zero. And when everyone is saying that, it often means that everyone that's going to sell has already sold. And the other aspect of that is when we had those huge valuations in the hundreds of millions of dollars, well, that's probably a fair argument that they're overvalued. Whereas now, as we just said in the pre-interview, something like Wabi's down to $4 million market cap, or once we start getting down to those, well, that's how much a small Wall Street startup would raise in their Series Bs and and
Mhm.
what on. So we are actually getting down to seriously real world value of these coins. Do you sort of have any thoughts on all that sort of thing as well? Or?
Yeah, well, I think it's actually a really good point. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation in the market, and that's driven some of these projects well beyond what they should have actually been valued at. And we still have a lot of projects that are valued well beyond what they should be valued at in terms of actual effect of the networks. I mean, we were mentioning Horizon State in the pre-interview, and like that's an amazing project that is getting real world partnerships with gigantic organizations and is looking at doing national elections and things like this, and that's really big and exciting. And yet, they're only valued at a few $1 million currently. And so it really comes down to the situation of creating actual value and demand for your currencies and your tokens at this point. And a lot of things that we're seeing right now with 100, 200, $300 million market caps don't actually have that market demand
Yeah.
currently for their
I
tokens.
completely agree. And if something like Horizon State has that first election and they pen a $2 million deal where they have to buy that $2 million of tokens, of HST tokens off market, which is how that works, it's going to break away from everything goes down if Bitcoin goes down. And if Power Ledger does the energy trading in Thailand and that all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's an actual huge demand, as you say, it's not possible for the traders and the chartists just to push it down. There's actually going to be huge buying coming in on these projects that are being used. So I can't wait for that day.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. And it's coming. This is the thing is that in these times of extreme market pessimism, it's really hard for people to look and go, well, everything's going to be okay and these projects are going to be successful at some point. And regardless of the price of a lot of these tokens currently, these teams are still building things. Horizon State has not closed all their offices and gone away, nor have many other projects. Some have because they've been terribly fiscally irresponsible and have not maintained liquidity or value for themselves and been able to pay their staff. And that's the market, man. We got startups. The startups are going to fail because they don't know how to run their businesses, but a lot of others are continuing to develop in a very compelling way.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, was it Recoin or whatever the SEC cracked down on yesterday? And I think they were promising a coin backed by real estate and diamonds, and it turned out to be a scam. And people panic and they go, oh, the SEC is coming down on ICOs. Well, it's like, hold on, no. They stamped out one that was literally a scam. Like, that is exactly what we want, guys. This is a great thing for the space.
That's right. Everyone's out there saying, well, we want less scams, but we also don't want government intervention. And the thing is, the community is not self-regulating at the moment. And I'd love to see that happen. I would love to see, more self-regulation happen within the communities, but no one cares because we find that moral hazard with ICOs where they're not actually compelled to be more transparent. They're actually compelled to be less transparent to make more money.
Yeah, I even think if you had no regulation at all change from now on, people have been burnt. They've learnt their lesson. There's not going to be another huge run with crappy projects raising $10, $20 million next time. It's a bit like, questioning about what's a good parent and all sorts of moral philosophies. I think with no regulation and no change alone, the people have learnt their lesson and they're going to tell their friends, oh, be careful, read their white paper and look at their team. And I just really hate that there's going to be too much innovation and it's going to stifle growth, I believe.
Yeah, we definitely have to keep in mind that we want to continue growing in a very positive direction, but that, if too many people get burned, it's a bad thing. I think that's what we saw in the previous, market situation with December, January. A lot of people got excited, they got in, they got burned, and now for every person who's saying, it's okay, guys, cryptocurrency is still amazing, you have probably 20 running around, well, I bought Bitcoin at 20,000, I sold it at 10,000, therefore, it is a scam.
Segueing into politics a little bit, because I know that's something that you're pretty passionate about and a lot more well-versed than myself in. So sort of I know you had a bit of a rant the other day. What are the things that you're really passionate about, that overlap between politics and, we touched on Horizon State a little bit, but where can you see it being most impactful, I guess, in terms of blockchain?
Sure, absolutely. I think there's a massive intersection here between this technology and politics. And I think that cryptocurrencies are inherently political. I mean, you look at the Genesis block of Bitcoin and it was literally critiquing the banks, right?
Yeah.
And the second article, which wasn't actually written into the block, but was also on that newspaper's front, was about Israel sending tanks into Gaza. So it's inherently political. The whole cryptocurrency scene is, but there's amazing use case potential. I look at what I consider to be my second home, Russia, and the corruption there is out of control. And the government has been trying very hard to lessen the levels of corruption. But it's hard because, the president can come out and say, hey, guys, let's all be less corrupt. And everyone goes, yeah, sure. That's no problem. And then tomorrow, everyone just goes right back to being corrupt. But if you actually have, let's imagine public services on the blockchain, smart contracts, you go in for a government meeting to do whatever, register your business, for example. Instead of having to pay a bribe, it's on a smart contract. You pay the fee to the smart contract and it goes that way. And they can't get in and get those bribes.
Yeah. It's 10 years since Lehman Brothers, I think, yesterday as well.
Yep.
And the other thing you said there, Russia. So Russia's an interesting one. They were going to look to outright ban Bitcoin, then they flip-flopped again a couple of years later, and we see those, anti-US dollar sort of movements selling down all their bonds and going into gold. And so you spent a bit of time in Russia, did you? Or?
Yeah, I lived there for a few years.
Awesome. And what's the feeling like there? Are people sort of scared of their government, or are they very much, Putin's a strong leader? Because you get so mixed signals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot more vibrant there than a lot of people looking from the outside in give it credit for. There's a lot of voices who are anti-Putin, but most people like him. Most people are giant fans of him because they see that he has moved the country in a positive direction. And I don't think it's necessarily positive for Russian democracy that he has been in so long and has crushed all opposition, because basically the party United Russia has totally stamped out all opposition parties that are not directly aligned with them.
Yeah.
So they even go to the point of like crushing like mayors and like towns in Siberia and stuff, just because that could be a spark that could start a real opposition movement against them. So that's highly problematic.
Yeah. I'm not a big book reader because I love documentaries, but one of the books I did read was The Colder War by Marin Katusa. It's all about the resources and Russia's role in that, and he talks about that Putin role and stuff. Because I think this is all so important because of the what Bitcoin can do. So
Mhm.
like I said, they really want anything that is against the US dollar. They want to move away from that. And at the same time, China doesn't want capital fleeing the country. So it's interesting to watch them see that mix of, China saying things like blockchain but not Bitcoin recently and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. I can't wait to see how this plays out.
I think we're going to see a big movement against of people moving away from the U.S. dollar as time moves on. And I think we're starting to see the real um, critical mass buildup of that happening now, mainly because it's going to be the Europeans who are going to be the ones who will want to move away from the U.S. dollar because of what we've seen recently, where the U.S. is literally telling German companies, well, you can't do business with Iran because we have sanctions on them, and if you do business with them, we're going to shut you down as well out of the financial system. You're not going to be able to access the SWIFT network anymore, for example. And those kind of things, it's too draconian and it'll push people away.
Yeah, was there a politician that had her bank account shut down by one specific bank the other day because they didn't agree with something she did? And one by one, we have Twitter now. These things go out and they go viral.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was Wells Fargo, and it was a politician who was accepting donations from the cannabis industry.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
And well, that's the thing, is that it's why couldn't she accept donations from the cannabis industry, except that there's this duality of laws where some states it's legal, but the federal government still classifies it as being illegal, and the banks want to stay on board with the federal government, and
Yeah.
what a mess.
I mean, on that, I tried to look into all the cannabis projects, and there wasn't any that really stuck out to me. So I don't know if you've researched any, but I was just going to say Metal and Metal Pay. I'm not sure if you've
Yeah.
covered that. I think they're pretty close to launch now, and they're really looking to bank adult entertainment, I think it was, cannabis, and those industries that are pretty legitimate now, but banks just won't give them services. So.
Yeah, I mean, the banks are behind the times. This is the thing, is that the more and more you see what's being built here, we're not going to need the banks in 20 years. And they realize that they've been put on notice. We can do peer-to-peer lending. You want to get a house loan? Well, you can go and get it from somebody, and you can lock a smart contract. And if you're worried about the value of Bitcoin and Ethereum, well, great. Now we have all of these stable coins that are running on the Ethereum network, for example, like with the Gemini coin. So it's going to get less and less relevant actually having a bank account, because your accounts do get shut down. I mean, my mom said the other day that she's now getting charged to put cash into her bank account here in New Zealand. How freaking ridiculous is that?
Yeah, no, it's the same in Australia with cash deposits to exchanges. There's a small percentage fee now as well. ICOs, mate. What do you have any favorites at the moment, or are you seeing what everyone is seeing in terms of it's just tough across the board, or are you noticing trends to more venture capital and private raises, and really knowing that the public doesn't have a lot of Ethereum to hand over anymore?
Yeah. Well, we've definitely seen the move overall towards a situation of more and more VCs being involved, and if not even never having a public sale, because it's simply easier legally and it costs less money. But I don't think that's the right decision for ICOs to make. I think if you actually do go through the steps to have a public sale, you give most of your tokens to the public, you're actually going to have a community, not a bunch of venture capital firms looking to 2 or 3x their return. And that is definitely something that has happened recently. And I guess the second note would be, if we look at the situation currently, I feel like there's been a massive drawdown on ICOs. Like, I think I just saw an article like this, August was the lowest month of the year so far for ICO raises.
Yeah, I remember in the first half of the year, the articles were coming out, oh, we're on pace to surpass 2017. But then someone told me, I think if you took out EOS and Telegram, there was actually a huge fall off because they were so big. So makes sense.
There you go. People are getting more selective because they've seen that there are some ICOs that pump only because they have certain social influencers backing them that can pump them.
Yeah.
And then there are others that they just don't get the hype. They don't do well. They don't provide returns. They're asking for too much money. The token metrics are all wrong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes it really hard to find really killer ICOs, but they're out there. It just takes a lot more work to find the really good ones.
Yeah, I've actually heard a couple of good ideas lately, but again, a lot of them are going straight to private raising and very small market caps now, which is pretty cool as well. So I definitely don't think that ICOs are dead. It's such a good way to fundraise, whereas everyone is acting like they're dead, they're never going to happen again, and so on. There's no need for Ethereum ever, but
But that's just the market overall right now. Everyone's saying all cryptos are dead except Dogecoin, and it's all just over. And that's actually the kind of market sentiment that you want to see, because it means that we might be really bottoming out sentiment-wise.
And I know what I love about Dogecoin. So it was invented by Jackson Palmer, the Aussie guy. But I think that's a great example of the crypto space not taking itself too seriously, particularly OGs, the guys that have been around a few years. You know, Dogecoin, it is what it is. It's, if you want to send money, it's a pretty good, cheap way to do it. It's not trying to be something it's not. It hasn't changed a lot. Look at all these fancy white papers, and yet, if you want to send money from A to B, Dogecoin's still a good way to do it, and it's grown in market cap.
Well, it's freaking hilarious, because I think it's number 18 or something today on CoinMarketCap. And you look at like Wanchain or Icon or any of these like really serious projects with big serious teams, big serious partnerships, getting crushed by a dog, man. A dog meme.
Exactly. Oh, we're going to upset people when we talk about some of those ones that got shielded so hard. You know, I don't like to speak badly of anyone, but some of the things that Ian Bellina was saying in making episodes called 100x and stuff, I mean, you can't promise 100x returns to people in some of these projects, and they're the ones that are down 95% plus now, some of those. So,
well, that's right. And there was definitely a time and a place for that kind of thinking, and a lot of people who responded to that message at that time, but that's not real. That's not long-term thinking. That's, I'm going to get in, I'm going to make millions of dollars, abuse the people who are empowering me to have this platform, and then move on. So I kind of feel like his time as an influencer is winding down, because there has been a history of things that have really enraged the community, essentially.
Yeah, they've got good memories. And interesting that Vitalik came out and said no 1,000x returns, and again, the market makes headlines. It's like, come on, guys. If 1,000x from here is 200 trillion, which is like all of M2 money supply or something absolutely ridiculous. So we've got to be realistic, guys. Yeah,
that's right as well. I mean, if we could see the whole crypto market being as much as like gold, for example, that would be a great step. That's like 10x or whatever from where we, no, not even more than that, more than 10x from where we are right now. I think it's about 7 trillion annually or something like that. So, I mean, just think about that. If we can just get to where gold is, that's massive. That is massive. Just owning Bitcoin, nothing else, you'd be doing A-okay. Not to mention, of course, there is still great potential in all these alternative coin projects that are providing real value.
Yeah. Any favorites? I know this is always tough to shill your bags or whatever. There's always going to be people that say, oh, you're an influencer, you're shilling, and some of these are such low cap now because they're down 90%. But do you have any standouts or ones that are a bit underrated or anything like that?
Oh, sure. I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff I've got in my portfolio that I really like. And there's stuff that I don't have in my portfolio that I also really like. And it's always a tricky conversation, because no matter when you talk about something, people say, oh, it's just not the case. You know, if we like something, you probably have it. And if you don't like something, you probably don't have it. And that's just the nature of the game. But some ones that I have that I really like, obviously, I've been really looking at the price of Cardano recently and thinking, it's getting pretty good looking.
Same here. And I remember thinking, I've missed the boat on that. And I definitely, you're not immune to FOMO no matter how many cycles you've been through. And I said to a few of our followers, close followers, 10 cents. And they thought I was crazy. And I had orders filled at 10 and 7 cents. It's probably going to go a lot lower than that, but
yeah. I'm watching it, man. If I see it go like even lower, I'm doubling my position without a doubt. I never thought I'd see prices this cheap again, but here we are. We are definitely back to that position. In terms of, I'll give you one more that I've got. I would say Elastos. Elastos is one that I'm very enthusiastic about, and is at a ridiculously cheap price at the moment. Might go cheaper in the current markets, but
there's three big cap coins that I've been meaning to do real detailed analysis on, and it's Cardano, EOS, and Elastos. So there you go.
There you go.
Cool.
And one that, and just to give some my non-bag ones that I actually really, really like, and I've been considering out of these, but I just haven't. I've actually been doubling down on positions that I currently hold instead of adding new coins in. But I'm a big fan of Zencash, and I'm a big, I guess, Horizon now.
Yeah.
And a big fan of PoonDX. I really like what they're doing as well. So.
I haven't looked into that one a lot. Can you give me a quick summary of PoonDX?
Yeah, sure. Basically, they are doing point-of-sale terminals that allow you to pay in cryptocurrency, buy cryptocurrency, and sell cryptocurrency at your local cafe.
Is that an actual hardware point of sale?
Yep, that's an actual hardware point of sale.
A little bit of that, okay.
And so they're looking to ship, I think, 700,000 of these terminals within the next 5 years or something like that. And they're already starting to ship them globally. Wow. So if you could just imagine walking down to your local cafe, walking in and saying, "Oh man, Ethereum's just dropped like 10%. I'm going to go, buy some real quick. I'm going to pay for my coffee using Bitcoin." And then by the end of having your coffee, the dip's over. It has gone back up 10%. You sell your Ethereum. Oh, great. We just made $200 while I was sitting here, and I just had that instant ability to get over there and buy and sell that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting debate about the kind of is that a middle step? Because things like a Comey wallet, I did that AMA last night, and we've got the CoinJar card in Australia. I don't know if you can use that in New Zealand too.
I'm not sure. Don't think so.
Okay. So yeah, 10x, Monaco, all these cards. It's kind of like, are we going to go that path where you can swipe your card and pay with crypto, or is it going to be a completely new hardware system that everyone gets rolled out as well? So that's exciting as well.
Yeah, I think the really interesting innovation that PoonDX is bringing, that you can buy crypto from the terminal in your cafe. So that's
okay. Sweet. I did not know.
So that takes it the next step from just, it's not just you can just pay in crypto here, but you can actually buy your crypto here. So that's also cool. It's like a mini exchange in your cafe. So it's certainly an interesting idea.
Regulators are going to love that one.
Oh yeah, they're gonna be all over it. They're gonna have a great time.
Cafes in Amsterdam, stop in and have a beer and a joint and buy crypto.
Walk out with no money.
Interesting people you've met, mate, or interviewed or met in person, or who do you think's just doing great stuff in the space?
Oh yeah. Gosh, there's a lot of really great stuff being done. I mean, you mean in terms of like content creators or of like CEOs of companies?
Yeah, or both. I mean, I've certainly met or interviewed people where I've thought, they were a bit uptight. I don't really like the vibe I get off them. And I've met other people where I think, oh wow, what a great guy. That gives me more confidence in this project. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the probably the most open people is Charles Hoskinson. I've interviewed him and I've met him at conferences and things. Just really strikes me as being genuine and open, just loving crypto and loving the crypto community and being all about tech and delivering more for people. And so I think he's really, very open, very transparent, and loves what he's doing. And it's always been a pleasure to get to talk to him. So
cool. And what's the question you get most from your followers or in the comments? Is it general, where's the bottom, or is it, what are you noticing at the moment?
Where'd you buy that shirt, Lark?
You've got a good collection.
I'm not even wearing one of my exciting ones today. No, seriously though. I think a lot of it's just when bottom, where's the bottom going to be? How long till we get there? And it's an incredibly tricky metric. If any of us actually had that crystal ball to say, well, the bottom's going to be tomorrow at 11:35 a.m. Great, we'd all be billionaires. But the reality is that we are working with a market that is short on liquidity in a lot of places, and that is very susceptible to movements by whales. I mean, you saw what happened with that Silk Road or Mt. Gox address, whichever one it ended up being. But that address that had 111,000 Bitcoin, they only dumped like 10% on the exchanges, and that was probably a key factor in that dip we did see happen recently. And then you see some FUD news come out and everyone panics, and it just creates this environment where I feel like the emotions are very raw in the market. The sentiment's very raw at the moment.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a case of, well, is the tail wagging the dog when you read that story? Is it just the community reacting and panic selling because they fear Bitcoins are about to be sold? I think I read an article yesterday that there's only been 3.5% of ICOs sell their ETH, and yet everyone is of this mindset that every ICO is dumping all their ETH, and that's why the price is going down. Well, it's actually not the case at all.
That's it. But those stories cause panic. Those stories cause people to go, "Oh my God, I have to." If the ICOs are getting out, they must know something I don't.
And on the flip side of that, it's the OGs and the guys with the big wallet addresses in the top 100 that have, on paper, they've lost billions of dollars, but they're not here for the money. They don't really care about price. They're believers in the tech, and they'll go down with the ship long term. And all that stuff certainly gives me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, well, and it's all a question of perspective, too. I mean, this is the thing for some of these big Bitcoin addresses it's really interesting when the old addresses get activated, like this one that was activated the other day, because people kind of start to discount that, like, it's never going to move, and it hasn't moved in 5 years. I know they're still out there. And that actually brings in a really interesting question. Do you think Satoshi is going to reappear one of these days and start moving around his Bitcoin? Because we saw what happened, the sentiment that comes out of a big address that holds 100,000 Bitcoin being moved around. Satoshi's got around 1 million across different addresses potentially. Do you think he's going to come back?
You'd have to ask Craig Wright that. No, I shouldn't laugh. I really don't know if Craig was possibly part of the team. Who knows if they cut their private key in 4 or if there's 4 team members. I mean, if you were going to sell, I think you would have at least sold some by now if it was about money. I don't see those coins ever being dumped on market or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe not. But this is why I kind of liked the Elon theory. I know it's not going to be Elon Musk, but if it was Elon Musk, it would make sense. Let's let it ride until okay, I'm going to sell my Bitcoin when it gets to $1 million a piece, and we're going to go build a city on Mars.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I haven't thought about it that way.
Well, but yeah, any normal human would have probably moved some of that Bitcoin and sold it by now, which means that it's probably locked up in a multi-sig address, and one person potentially is no longer alive even.
Yeah.
So
let's end on a positive note. I put out a tweet last night about all the things that I'm excited about why I think Ethereum's not dead. But in general, what are the headlines and, halvening next year and what projects are coming online? And I just see the sentiment being completely different next year. So, do you agree with that, or what are you really looking forward to next year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just look around and I just think, how can you not be excited? I know the price is down, and that can have a strong emotional effect on people. There's so many exciting things coming. We look at the projects that are actually starting to deliver and what they're starting to deliver. That's very exciting. When we see that there are so many services coming on board in terms of, custodianship, and hey, if it's not your keys, not your Bitcoin, but still, there are a lot of people who can't deal with that, who don't want to deal with that. And that is a reality that I think the crypto community needs to face, that people are freaked out by the idea of private keys and all this stuff, and they would literally like a bank-like service. And those are coming on board, though. It's happening. Yeah. And we got, this backed thing coming, and a lot of really, really big stuff is happening.
Yeah, I think it's a lot like the email you hear about in the mid-90s when people were saying, you've got to type in this address and email's never going to catch on. Well, yeah, setting up a wallet's kind of hard and difficult, but it's probably going to be 2 clicks within the next 12 months, and you're not going to know you're using blockchain on the back end and so on.
That's going to be the big step, is when people don't know they're using blockchain, much in the same way that when people get on the computer, they just go to Facebook. They know they can type an address and go to Facebook, and they just know that works. They don't care what the technology is with, HTTP and all this stuff. They don't care. They don't want to know. They just want to be able to go and share cat pictures.
And finally, I think people forget that Bitcoin is $6,000 a coin. Like, some people are acting like it's dead and crypto's dead. I mean, every year, basically, it's gone up by a factor of 10 since 2012, 2011 even. And yet people are acting like it's dead. I mean, come on, guys. One Bitcoin is $6,000.
I know. Well, if you look at what was the price this time a year ago? It wasn't $6,000. I think it was about $4,000 or something on the 1 year price. And just, it's all a matter of perspective. Again, if you got in December, ouch. Ouch, I feel for you. It's really, that was the tough time to get involved. But if you've been involved since, let's say, September last year, you're still sitting pretty okay. And maybe you missed those opportunities to take profits. And that's an important skill for people to learn, actually taking profits. And it can be tricky because you think everything's just going to keep going forever and ever and ever. Like, don't be afraid to, take a bit of money out once in a while. And like, hey, I just saw that coin pump by 500%. Just hold on for dear life forever.
Awesome. Well, mate, we could chat all day, but we better wrap it up. Any final thoughts for people?
To the moon. No. The bear market will continue for a while, but at the same time, the sentiment is bottoming out. People are, I really feel like we're reaching a point of maximum fear, maximum capitulation, maximum depression. And it's not to say that's not going to last for a while, but there's massive opportunity for crypto. The future, I just look at it and think, wow, how incredibly bright to be at this opportunity again, where people in December were saying, if only I could have bought Bitcoin when it was $6,000, here's the opportunity. But if you can look past the fear, that is the key.
And if you're still watching videos like this one with two crazy guys talking about digital money on the internet, then you're probably interested in the tech and you're probably going to do well in the long run.
Amen to that.
So thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks for watching, guys.